Good afternoon, everyone. Patricia Mullen, Patsy Mullen from Cambridge Trust. We're so glad that you're able to join us. We're here to celebrate Cybersecurity Month with some of our business partners in providing you, our clients and prospects, with best practices as it relates to mitigation of fraud. So pleased to be here. I oversee the Treasury Management Group here at the bank, and I'm going to turn it over to my peers for their introduction, and then we'll start the session with our guest speaker. Peter Bamber?
Yes, I'm Director of Information Security for Cambridge Trust. I'm responsible for our data security. I'll be happy to answer any questions at the end of the presentation.
Great. Walter?
Great. Thank you, Patsy. Walter McGurney, Director of Security for Cambridge Trust. I oversee fraud investigations, so I look forward to the presentation and any questions you have after Michelle's presentation.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. And I'm so pleased to have our guest speaker today is Michelle Piazza, a business associate of mine for many years too, and brings a lot of experience to the table, having had a previous career in banking, but specifically she oversees the MP Global Ventures organization with specialization in cybersecurity strategy, cybersecurity assessment, roadmaps to remediation and implementation of remediation programs. So I'm turning it over to Michelle. I want to make a couple notes here that we are being recorded. The recording will be available through the bank's website in the next couple days. And if we could ask you to please hold any of your questions, we'll be going to the chat room at the end of Michelle's session, and we'll be addressing all of your questions at that stage. So Michelle, thanks so much for joining us. Take it away.
Thank you so much. It's an honor to be here, and thank you, Patricia, Walter, Renee, and Peter for having me. Just a quick disclosure, everything I'm going to share with you today is publicly available, and the opinions that I interject are from my experience and strictly my own as a cyber professional. So we are in Cybersecurity Awareness Month. We appreciate your time and interest today. This is a very passionate subject for me, and we'll address your questions at the end of the session, as Patsy mentioned. Next slide to the agenda, please. Yeah, we can go to the next agenda slide, the second slide. Yeah, there we go. We have a full agenda for you today. We're going to look at some of the key cyber events in 2023 so far. There have been many, as you probably have heard in the news. There are some statistics from the 2023 Verizon Data Breach Investigation Report that we'll look at under Ugly Facts. The cost of an incident, whether cyber, ransom, or otherwise, is escalating, and we'll look at some of those parameters. We have some best practices and lessons learned and mitigation strategies we want to discuss with you. There is also a heavy focus on security, privacy, and compliance and the interrelationships between these three. So we'll take a look at some of those parameters, and we'll leave you with some key takeaways. Talk a little bit about some of the services we can help you with, and then I included some hot links in the appendix, so when you do get the deck, you can just click on them and reference it for more information. Next slide, please. Threats are evolving at a breakneck pace, and as you can imagine, we've had many notable events. The MGM Resorts event that happened last month was of particular interest to me, because the threat actor actually came through the help desk. They camouflaged themselves as an employee, had enough information as an employee for the help desk to believe them. And once they granted access to this person to help troubleshoot what they were reporting as an incident, they took over and locked out many systems, compromised personal information. And as you know, Las Vegas is a huge locale for Black Hat and many cyber and RSA type events. And they were able to get to many of those attendees' information through this avenue. So you just never know how smart these threat actors are getting. And with the onset of AI and ChatGPT and all the new technology that's coming in, this is going to be a hot focus in the future. Other global events were with SABRE in September and also Save the Children. Next slide, please. So some of the statistics, in September alone, there were only 71 reported incidents. But with the onset of the new SEC regulation requiring listed firms to report within 4 days of their actual cyber event, I think we're going to see these numbers start growing by leaps and bounds. Darkbeam, the MOVEit incident, which probably affected most financial institutions. We're still not clear on how many, but the reported were very high, and because it moved actual, not only compromising data, but actually moved funds, it was a big notable event in May. Breaches are on the rise, and they're also on the rise in higher education and school systems, which traditionally that sector has not been able to invest heavily in their cyber ecosystems. But now, given the highly concentrated PII and sensitive data that's held in those systems, more focus is being spent on the school systems and higher ed to protect their data. Next slide, please. The ugly facts. So from the data breach report, and this is a report that Verizon issues every single year. It's the data breach investigation report. It is probably well over 100 pages, but it is very worthwhile to read. The key focuses and some of the resulting information out of there was resilience, and supply chain attacks. We know ransomware is proliferate throughout the industry, but the focus on resilience in every avenue of your organization, and more importantly, your third-party vendors or partners. The threat actors are coming in through these third parties because their technology, their security, their infrastructure has not been as zipped up as you would hope for it to be. And they are coming in through those weaker links. We had a report of a cement company, small mom and pop cement company, working with a very large government contractor, and the threat actor came in through this cement company because, of course, they didn't have all their infrastructure buttoned up, and compromised the government entity, and unfortunately was not a pretty picture in the amount of money ransomware they had to pay. So this report is, as I said, this is at the end of the deck and the appendix, and your third parties are very interested in what you are doing to keep your environment safe. So whether you have a third-party risk management program, you conduct an annual assessment with them to make sure they haven't been compromised. All those key best practices should be in place with the focus on supply chains. Next slide, please. So incidents, as you can imagine, security breaches cost organizations real money. They spend money in remediation costs. We spend money in investigation expenses, litigation expenses, customer disruption, the loss of competitiveness, the loss of revenue, and of course, shareholder value, which is front and center. IBM actually calculates the cost of a breach financially and reputationally to a financial institution that's been breached at almost $6 million per data breach. In the healthcare sector, globally, they estimated around 4.45 million. things like intellectual property theft. If you have a departing employee that misappropriates trade secrets and confidential information, costs the organization long-term. The consequences of these data breaches or cybersecurity incidents are very apparent to organizations, giving the staggering amount that is being paid out to settle and investigate them. The loss of customer trust is something that takes decades to rebuild. And third-party extortion, where they're either coming in through, as I mentioned, that supply chain to get to either public partners or board members, is front and center in terms of confidentiality and reputational risk. And of course, being a financial institution, Cambridge Trust has to comply with the new SEC regulatory rules and may be subject to fines if they don't. So this is front and center for all of us. Next slide, please. So some of the meat is that there are a core set of basics that every organization should have in place as part of their daily and weekly and annual hygiene. And just as we boost our immune systems in October when flu season comes or any other immune compromised viruses come around, it's a great time to check in under all of these cyber hygiene items to take a look to make sure that you are turbocharging your environment as much as you can. Most of them are table stakes, and we'll go through a few of them that I consider table stakes. But you must have a very documented, implemented, tested protocol to make sure that you are buttoning up your environment. Education is key. What did I put that at? Number 12. So conducting regular phishing exercises. Email is the #1 way that environments are being compromised these days. And it's just from, they're getting more sophisticated. It's not just looking at links or certain information in the email, but they're actually, doing a better job of tricking the employee. But educating your organization and your partners regularly will help minimize the results of those phishing exercises. Number 2, have an implemented 2-factor authentication or a multi-factor authentication protocol. That's where you log in, a code is sent either to another email or to your phone. Or you can use one of the authenticated apps on your phone, like Microsoft and Okta, and those are very effective in reducing the number of threat actor infringements. Having an exercise incident response plan is very key, and this also can affect your ability to get cyber security insurance. They are now looking for probably all 20 of these items in cybersecurity, renewals of cybersecurity insurance. And I have some clients that did not do a lot of these items and were unable to renew their insurance until they got it zipped up. But having a plan with multiple playbooks, if you were phished, if you have ransomware, if there's other denial of service vectors, exercising that at least once a year with your, not only internally, but with your key partners is now a piece of justification that cyber and insurance companies are looking for. Strong password policy and management using some kind of management tool is, again, one of those table stakes. Encrypting where you can, both for your data at rest and also in motion. Giving people the right security access at the right time for their right role is very key. That's number 8. And also segregating that duty. Your admin accounts don't overlap with your day-to-day accounts. 15 is a new one because we all go into a parking garage and we hit the QR code and, you know, we get our discount on our parking space, but QR codes are now being threatened because they're embedding bots in them. And whether you're in a restaurant, a parking garage, you know, just be cautious with that and make sure that they're really a trusted QR code. Robust policies, procedures, standards, and documentation. Again, more evidence that needs to be provided to cyber insurance companies to make sure you not only have the policy or standard documented, that it's educated throughout the organization and it's tested and it's implemented and you are actively following it. Routine things like vulnerability management and penetration testing or again, table stakes. And then doing periodic updates to your business continuity plans, your disaster recovery plans, your incident response plan, and crisis management. And crisis management covers everything from tornadoes, earthquakes, hurricanes, and those non-cyber, non-technology type incidences. The only other one is number 10, which is now the organizations, insurance companies are requiring an annual cybersecurity risk assessment. And this is an assessment where you take a appropriate framework like NIST, or for financial institutions, it's FFIEC. You can also use simpler control frameworks like CIS. If you're manufacturing, you would use ISO. And what we do is we do an assessment against every single control there. And this just released a 2.0, which makes it much easier to actually assess your organization. They pulled out a lot of the governance. So if you have a GRC tool or framework in place, it's much easier to assess against that. But we come in and we do an assessment against all these controls. We find your evidence, we prove that you're doing what you're saying you're doing, and then you're scored. And based on that score, either there's remediation in certain areas, or if you do well because you've kept up with it, then there's little remediation that needs to happen. And this is also evidence to your auditors and to the SEC and to your cyber insurance companies. So big thing to have in your back pocket and to be done on a regular basis. I help a lot of clients with this, and we've now moved to some nice tools that automate it so they can track their progress year after year, and you don't have to do it in an Excel spreadsheet. I think that's good for that. Okay, next slide. So security, compliance, and data privacy. These are the components of a GRC or government risk and compliance framework. And if you have risk management in place in your organization, then you know that all of these work together and are highly interdependent. You can't have great security and be compliant. You can't be compliant with the new data privacy regulations that are going in without identifying the data in your systems and securing it at, you know, a critical level or a medium level or a low level. There are 7 states that have actually implemented data privacy regulations. Of course, California, Tennessee recently launched theirs, Virginia, Delaware, Colorado, Connecticut, Utah, the New York District of Financial Services. And of course, if you do anything globally, you have GDPR, which is constantly, you know, changing their requirements and the rigor in which you must report and comply. There are an additional 5 to 6 states that are ready to release their regulations in the upcoming months. So if you need to comply with any of these, all of these in GDPR, you probably understand the challenge you're being faced with to stay compliant. My hope is that at some point we do get a federal data privacy law enacted, and that would make it a lot simpler, I think, across all states. Regulations add a lot of complexity In addition to the financial compliance, you need to comply with Sarbanes-Oxley, Gramm-Leach, Biley, FSMA, the Fair Act, and Account Credential, HIPAA, all the state, individual laws. So now you have your security and your privacy and your compliance all interdependent, needing to be tracked and monitored and measured and able to report to various organizations. We spent a lot of time with our clients talking about this integration, and it's all about managing your risk, whether it's from a security perspective, it's from a compliance perspective, or a privacy perspective. We need to manage the risk to reduce the liability for our clients, our third parties, and also reduce the attack vector surface that's being exposed. Next slide, please. So I hope we piqued your interest a little bit here, and we provided some value information to support your cyber hygiene. It's always good to recognize that no firm is immune. Your cyber defense is your firm's immune system. And no matter how many times you wash your hands, get your vaccines, get good sleep, there will be a compromise at some point. The cyber defense that you're looking for is to be as resilient as possible. So as soon as it does happen, you're able to respond given your good incident response playbook, and minimize the effect to your customers, your financial systems, and your reputation. It's not a matter of when, but if. So as we stay vigilant about keeping our policies, procedures, our testing, our phishing, our education, all of these things in tandem, just doing the basic table stakes on a routine basis will keep you resilient. There's a lot of PII and sensitive information in your transaction systems, trade secrets, and most importantly, your client information. So defending those crown jewels and knowing where they are. Is it being handled by your ERP vendor? Is it in your HR system? Is it actually, on premise in your organization? Knowing where that data is, classifying it, encrypting it, and putting extra segregation around those networks and those systems will help defend those crown jewels. Embracing this culture of cybersecurity with data privacy and compliance is absolutely paramount. All three must be kept up to a defensible position in order for you to be able to respond to a threat. Resilience is not just IT. I have many clients, they're like, oh, put together this risk management program, Michelle. Well, it's business and being supported by IT and the IT partners. It is a firm-wide responsibility. And the more the business understands how important their needs are communicated and identified in this defensible posture, the better your resilience will be. Unfortunately, employees are still the weakest link. And some of the studies that I put in the appendix and the reports, employees are the weakest link. They tend to be as diligent as they can, but they're also trying to do their job and keep the organization running. I went to a conference a couple of days ago, and there was a PhD professor, and he teaches this course on this human factor analysis and classification system. And this shows how you understand the strongest skills of every employee, and you actually apply them to the best work for that organization. And if coding, cybersecurity is grueling. It can be brutal given the amount of data people are looking at, the logs, the amount of information they have to synthesize. And they, under this framework, and it's a fascinating framework, which is why I put the link in there. Take a look at it. He teaches here in Illinois at IIT, And I'm actually going to take his course just to better understand how he applies this framework on a day-to-day basis to the organization to help improve and put the best people on the best tasks in order to secure the organization. Next slide, please. So who are we? We're MP Global Ventures, 25 plus years in financial services, across technology, security, risk management. I have worked both on the tech side and sat on the business when some of those key risk rules were being put in back in the early 2000s. I also provide vCISO services. So if the organization cannot afford a full-time employee, as a chief information security officer, we offer that as well in terms of assessments or analytics, third party, any kind of incident response planning. And I've listed some of the other services here. We also have a partner program. So if you say, oh, we need the best 3 pen testing organizations that you partner with, we can provide that as a service as well, and other services in terms of vendor partnership, MSSPs, MSPs, and it's across all sectors: manufacturing, financial services, consumer packaged goods, and professional services. Next slide, please. So we appreciate your time and your interest today. We're truly passionate about this area. I serve on a few boards, including InfraGard, which is, if you haven't heard of InfraGard, it's an organization that's nominal to join, but provides resources from the government, the FBI, CIA, and they are a good organization to keep your business card with, to have it in their Rolodex, to have the FBI in your Rolodex, to have the CISA organization in your Rolodex. So if you do have a compromise, you literally pick up the phone, they know who you are, and they will start partnering with you to remediate any attacks. So happy to help you with anything going forward. We appreciate your time in strengthening your cybersecurity resilience journey. The appendix we have here, next slide, were some additional reports that I quoted, and the CISA homepage is absolutely fantastic. We had a speaker there last week and just so willing to reach out to you, know your organization, be a resource to your internal CISO and IT organization, and will come to speak with you at you know, a drop of a hat. So they're really stepping up their game. They used to be a little invisible to us as a community, but now they're really stepping up their game in terms of how they can help protect. And then the last slide, this is a slide I found from the Cyber 360. It's just the nuts and bolts. So if you're, you know, I don't know if your organization is broken out like this, but if it is, these are some of the table stakes that you should be looking at. It's not a check the box exercise, but in your risk and governance and compliance, do you have, you know, these parameters set up? Do you do these reviews? If you're looking at your network security, of course you have firewall management, but how often do you look at the logs? Who's handling that? Who has your data? So just take a look at this. It's a great reference to slide to continually go back to make sure that you're staying compliant. And finally, these are just the top cyber threats since the beginning of 2023. And social engineering continues to be heightened given the new media channels that are constantly being evolving. Third-party exposure, as I mentioned, know your partners. They should know you. Everyone should be on a first name basis in terms of how they're handling your data, what data they're handling, and where they're handling it. If they are handing it off to a fourth party, you should absolutely know that. If you need to comply with SEC, they need to comply with the SEC. And you have to put these items in your contracts to make sure that you're not exposed. Simple things like configuration mistakes in your IT infrastructure, again, human error, just needs to be checked, rechecked, and constantly monitored. For cyber hygiene, again, not having strong password configurations, two-factor, changing your password, closing down your sessions after a certain amount of time if your laptop is left open. All these simple things that if they're done on a regular basis. The one I like is blocking websites for employees to download information. The amount of threat bots that are embedded in just downloading a simple link from Google or Safari or whichever Firefox browser you use is unbelievable when you go back and look on your laptop and look at your cookies. It's a simple thing. People just, go, oh, I just got to find this. And then all of a sudden their laptop is compromised. If you're cloud hosting, which, 95% of the organizations are, any constraints that you have with your data or your security need to be in that contract with that cloud hosted vendor to make sure that if they're compromised, your data is not at risk. Mobile devices are always a top point for vulnerabilities because our phones now are basically our laptops and we do so much on our phone. So the more you can limit what is being viewed on your phone, simple email is fine, but should they be going to the financial ERP system? Probably not. Internet of Things, which is more for manufacturing environments. But again, looking at the controls there and the security, just because it's not a software update, it's a firmware update in most of the cases. So Emerson, Ericsson, these engineers are coming into these organizations and plants. They're making tweaks and they're putting the plant at risk just because the security is not as buttoned up as it is for typical software. Ransomware, poor data management, and inadequate post-attack procedures. Again, incident response planning, exercising that, having those playbooks, knowing who's doing what, and will save your organization tons and tons of money. And you probably will not have to pay a ransom amount if you have that procedure in place. I think that takes us to Q&A.
Great, fantastic. Michelle, thank you so much for sharing your best practices with our fellow clients and business partners here too. And one of the things that came to my mind during this is my business partners, both Peter Bamber and Walter, we've checked all those boxes. So rest assured, Cambridge Trust is adhering to the best practices. I encourage any of you on today's webinar or the future viewers to contact any of us, whether it's to set up treasury management services to help with fraud mitigation or to go over best practices too. We'll be sending along our contact information. So we might have a few Q&As in here. Michelle, what advice do you have for retired individuals with laptops and desktops? Big question.
Typically, I would license your, Google or your Microsoft, platform. If you don't, find an independent, consultant or firm that services small businesses, and they can take you on as an entrepreneur or retired individual and support, because you should have regular, if you're not technical and you don't want to do the updates, and that could be everything from just connecting with your home printer to making sure your OS, your operating system, is up to date. Just getting that extra help, it's probably a twice a year kind of thing, can help keep everything clean. They can go through all your cookies. They can go through the amount of things that are loaded in your background that are running, maybe your laptop's slowing down, but I would engage, a small party to help with that. Staples is a great organization that does that now. But there's
Mhm.
probably someone local in your neighborhood even that does this for small businesses and can do that for you as a retiree.
Good. I was wondering about Best Buy. Do you feel comfortable with their services they provide also?
Yes, my husband uses Best Buy as his own personal help desk. So, but yeah, Best Buy is another organizations, and
Yeah.
some of them are changing their offerings because they need to make money, or they just can't do it. But even hooking up your sound system in your home or connecting, your Sonos, they come to the house and they can make sure that it's on a private network, which is what we have done in the place we just moved to. We just segregated everything and in our home, and they did a really great job.
Yeah, great. Another question that came in is, what items would you say are actionable for an individual? I think you might have covered a lot of it, but anything else you could think of?
Downloading, just be very sensitive to the site you're going to. And typically it's if it doesn't have HTTP and then the S, meaning it's a secure site, my MacBook Pro tells me it's not a secure site. So by keeping your operating system up to date, when you do go to a site that's a little compromised or may not be legit, it will tell you that. Cleaning out your junk in your email, the amount of things you can unsubscribe from that fill up in your junk email that just sit there. Now some of the systems are good. They're only holding it for 30 days, which is great. But look at that, clean that all out. And that will help you from, accidentally clicking on something that may not be legit. The other thing is just from a social engineering. I am not on social media. You will see me on LinkedIn and that's it. But Facebook, Instagram, if you're a big poster, you got to be really careful about who is compromising and who is accessing that. I had a lady here contact me. She ran a pet organization, and she had a threat actor compromise all 5 of her Facebook sites. He took it over, started soliciting donations from all of her contacts in her Facebook list, and said, okay, send me the $500 for the pet, and then we'll get you the rescue dog. She called me. She was just in hysterics. He had compromised her phone, her laptop, her sister's phone, her husband's phone, her husband's laptop. We worked on a plan. She got back and running. But he really did a number. And then I found out there were 5 other rescue pet organizations in Montana that the same individual compromised, and I helped them out.
Yeah. Is there anything my business partners, Peter or Walter, want to provide at this stage?
I certainly would take to heart everything Michelle had to say today, because it's been my experience that lack of attention is the biggest problem. If you follow those things, those suggestions, I have frankly taken it a step further. I actually have a separate device personally to do all my financial transactions on, that's all I use it for. I don't browse the internet on it. I only do banking on it, you name it. Otherwise, I keep it away from my mobile devices, my Microsoft products, you name it. I keep it very centralized, segregated, pardon me.
Great.
Yeah, the segregation is key, front and center. I absolutely agree with you, Peter. And if you have children, oh, Dad, hurry! I just got to get to this, get to this site and stuff. And they do it on your work laptop. Hopefully your work has whitelisted that they can't get to that site.
Yeah.
But from your phone or any other device, you have to be very conscious about what they're accessing, who's accessing it, and what they're doing with it, because they may just be downloading a simple game, but it's flawed, and all of a sudden your entire environment has been compromised. So be careful.
Looking at your settings also is very key too. I was doing some international traveling and I was surprised that the minute I went through some gate that I was getting a notice of some sorts. I'm trying to figure out how this person even knew that I was in this area. So being vigilant to set up the right controls, Michelle, is another thing on your laptop and your phone and other devices too.
Yeah, I would take a
Yeah.
totally new laptop if I was going to China. I would not
Yeah.
take my regular work laptop.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
And-
and Patsy, they say nowadays the biggest scam is imposter fraud, which we really need to be careful of, especially nowadays with AI, artificial intelligence.
Yes.
I just reviewed a segment the other day on the news that showed that, a lot of times, the fraudsters will call you at your house or on your cell phone, and that's just to get you to answer some questions, just so they can get the recording of your voice. And from there,
Yes.
they'll use the recording of your voice to commit fraud or commit scams where, they showed how real it is, where they use this person's voice to call a family member and say, hey, I've just been kidnapped and we're looking for a ransom. And the person hears that voice of their family member. So I think some important things to do about that, they gave some good recommendations, is, when you get a call that seems kind of odd, even though it sounds like a person, like a family or a friend, that you should always verify the caller, whether it's call the person back, or
Yeah.
even have a passcode that if you ask them a certain question, only you or that family member know the answer. Because if you were to ask them that question and the caller can't answer that question, then you know that you're not really speaking to a family member or a friend,
Yeah,
Um,
exactly. And and I'm glad you brought that up, Walter. We had that incident happen within my husband's family. They called my husband's mother and said my husband's son was in grave danger and and they actually had his voice on the phone for my mother-in-law to hear, and that she had to send $5,000. And so immediately she called me and said, Michelle, I said, don't answer any more phone calls, whatever. But they're
Michelle, you're right,
very
'cause-
experienced.
Because everything you went over today, Michelle, when it comes to cybersecurity, what it tends to lead to then is, financial fraud,
Right.
Like I said, it could be a grandson or granddaughter scheme where they're saying they're in the hospital or been in an accident and they're asking, we see a lot of, elder financial exploitation where they're trying to get elder customers to maybe wire money or buy gift cards. So anytime somebody asks you on the telephone, for a payment in gift cards, well, that's a red flag.
Yeah.
If someone tells you you need to pay in Bitcoin, that's the latest thing, because you can't really trace Bitcoin or gift cards, whereas
Right.
before you can trace a check, you can trace a wire. But at the end of the day, a lot of this comes down to, identity theft. Once they get your information, they're looking to expose your identity. So a good tip too is, we all do our own health check, but a good financial tip to do on the financial side is check your credit report. You can go to a website called annualcreditreport.com, and with the 3 different credit reporting agencies, Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion, you're allowed 1 free credit report a year. So it's good to check that to make sure there's no errors, no suspicious activity, no suspicious accounts being opened up.
Mhm.
And that's all going to help protect your identity also.
Well,
And
and to
I-
that
I
point,
basically-
I freeze my credit
Me
and have
too.
for
Right.
years.
Me
Yeah.
too. Yep. Yeah. If you keep it frozen, nobody can go pull anything. And having an identity access management in place, whether you're a large organization or smaller or independent, knowing who has access to your data, what they're doing with it, and like you said, if any new accounts are being opened. And financial institutions, I sent a wire out of Chase the other day. They do not call you and ask you for money. They do not,
Right.
have anything. Everything is done in writing, email, or through your account management, which I'm sure Cambridge Trust does as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All good recommendations here too. Is there anything else that we want to share with our attendants today? I think it was a very robust, and Michelle, thanks so much for your thought leadership on this. As I said, we'll have this available through the bank's website, and we'll be doing a follow-up email to those that attended today and those that were registered to provide not only a copy of the slides, but also contact information. And if there's anything that we could do for you, please don't hesitate to reach out to Michelle directly. She was providing her contact information, or to any of your business partners here at Cambridge Trust. We thank you for your time and wish you have a great day and happy Cybersecurity Month.